This week feels like another doorway. Several major planetary shifts happen within a few days of each other, and together they tell a very human story. It's the story of wanting to move forward while simultaneously feeling the weight of our past. It's the tension between possibility and hesitation. We begin the week with Mars entering Gemini on June 28th. Mars represents our drive, our initiative, and the way we take action. Gemini, on the other hand, is curious, adaptable, and constantly learning. Instead of charging straight ahead, Mars in Gemini encourages us to ask questions, gather information, have conversations, and remain open to more than one possibility. Sometimes we think strength means having all the answers before we act. Mars in Gemini reminds us that strength can also look like curiosity. It can look like saying, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to learn. Only 2 days later, on June the 30th, Jupiter leaves Cancer and enters Leo, where it will remain for roughly the next year. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Leo is the sign of creativity, courage, generosity, leadership, and authentic self-expression. This isn't simply a call to become louder or more visible. It's an invitation to stop apologizing for the gifts we've been giving. Many people misunderstand Leo energy as wanting attention. Healthy Leo isn't interested in attention for his own sake. Healthy Leo simply shines because that's what lights do. That's what light does. Each of us has something unique we've been entrusted to bring into the world. Jupiter in Leo asks us to stop hiding those gifts out of fear that someone may criticize them. But almost immediately after changing signs, Jupiter forms a challenging square with Chiron in Taurus. Chiron represents our deepest wounds, but also our capacity to transform those wounds into wisdom. Taurus seeks stability, security, and self-worth. And Jupiter says, grow, expand, take up space. Chiron quietly whispers, remember what happened the last time you tried? Perhaps you were rejected. Perhaps you failed. Perhaps you were criticized. Perhaps you learned that being fully yourself wasn't always safe. This aspect reminds us that growth often awakens old fears before it produces new opportunities. The discomfort isn't necessarily a sign on the wrong path. Sometimes it's simply evidence that you're leaving an old version of yourself behind. Then, on July 4th, Mars reaches its conjunction with Uranus in Gemini. Whenever Uranus becomes active, life has a way of surprising us. Plans change, new ideas arrive unexpectedly, conversations take unexpected turns, solutions appear where we weren't even looking. While Uranus can certainly bring external surprises, I often find its greatest work happens internally. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't that the world changes. Sometimes it's that our perspective changes. One new idea can completely rearrange the future. This week's Torah portion, Pinchas, also centers on decisive action. Pinchas is one of the more challenging portions in the Torah because it raises difficult questions about zeal, justice, leadership, and responsibility. Throughout Jewish history, scholars have wrestled with its meaning, reminding us that it is not a simple story to imitate, but one to study with care and humility. What stands out to me this year is not the specific action itself, but the contrast between paralysis and responsibility. There are moments when everyone sees a problem, yet no one moves. Not because they don't care, but because uncertainty makes action uncomfortable. Throughout the Torah, we repeatedly see that leadership rarely begins with certainty. Moses didn't feel ready. Jeremiah believed he was too young. Jonah ran in the opposite direction. Again and again, Scripture reminds us that clarity often comes after we begin walking, not before. That's exactly this week's astrology seems to echo. Mars in Gemini asks us to stay curious. Jupiter in Leo asks us to stop hiding. Chiron reminds us that old wounds don't have to become permanent limitations. And Mars with Uranus reminds us that one courageous decision can change the direction of an entire season of life. Perhaps the question this week isn't whether you're completely ready. Perhaps the better question is whether your values are clear enough to take the next fateful step. You don't have to know the entire journey. You only have to recognize the next act of integrity that's being asked of you. Thank you so much for spending these few minutes with me. As always, I love to leave you with a question to reflect on throughout the week. Where in my life am I waiting for fear to disappear before taking the next step? And here's our week's affirmation. I don't need perfect certainty to move forward. I choose courage over hesitation, trusting that each fateful step reveals the next. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next time on Turning of Times.